back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, July 9th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So, we're going to start off the show, talk about some more comments made by Joe Burrow. This is regarding the Pro Bowl, as well as if the NFL does end up expanding to an 18-game schedule. So, we'll get into that. I'll give you my thoughts on it. Then in the second part of the show, I will continue my schedule breakdowns. Today, we will be going over the Chargers schedule. So that'll be the second part of the show. In the third part of the show, I will continue discussing contract negotiations regarding Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. Then in the fourth part of the show, some comments made by Lions defensive end Aiden Hutchinson on the expectations for the team going into the 2024 season. And then in the final part of the show, just talk about Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers now, and just his comments on his upcoming season, his first season with the Packers, one of the big free agent acquisitions that the Packers made this offseason. So that will be the final part of the show. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing what Joe Burrow had to say regarding the Pro Bowl, as well as the 18-game schedule that the NFL may eventually go to. So he talked about how, now regarding the Pro Bowl, he did talk about how the Pro Bowl could possibly be, in season. Similar to how, it is in hockey, how it is in baseball, how it is in basketball. Because the Pro Bowl is, that week in between the championship games and the Super Bowl. And this comes with, if the NFL does expand to an 18-game schedule, that could kind of be like, I guess, the second bye week. If they, decided to move the Pro Bowl to within the season. Because the other thing, too, is with the Pro Bowl is a lot of times you don't have all the stars playing in the Pro Bowl. Now, I know the format has changed, but when you got guys like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and, recently now Patrick Mahomes and those guys, partly because a lot of times, Brady and Mahomes are playing in the Super Bowl, but a lot of these guys end up not going to the Pro Bowl because, it's the end of the season and they kind of just want to, take the time off unless they are playing in the Super Bowl, like Tom Brady has a bunch of times, and now Patrick Mahomes has played in the Super Bowl a bunch of times now as well. Not as many times as Brady, but still. Within the season, if you move the Pro Bowl to, during the year, you might see those guys playing in the Pro Bowl now, being involved in those festivities, which I think, makes it better. Now, again, the format has changed. It's not like, the traditional, NFC versus AFC. You play 4 15-minute quarters and, that's it. But it's completely different now. There's skills challenges, and then you got the flag football game, of course. So it is different, but I mean, I'm fine with that idea. So this is the other stuff that he said. So that's basically, it would be a uniform second bye week for all teams. Because he has talked about this before, Joe Burrow, where, if you do expand the season to an extra week, got to give teams more bye weeks. Now, I know I went over, the comments made by Roger Goodell on this topic. I didn't mention the second bye week. But yeah, the second bye week I think is very important because, an extra game, you're going to add more wear and tear on these players throughout the season. Now, there's players that have said if this ends up happening, they obviously want to get paid. As long as they're getting paid for the extra game, there's players that'll do it. But I know there's some players that probably aren't huge fans of it. Just because, again, the football season's long enough as it is. Now you're expanding it another week. But I think at least adding another bye week and you move the Pro Bowl to within the season, that's something that I don't have a problem with. I think that would be a good idea because you would be giving every team another bye and gives them extra rest with that additional game. And it would still put the Super Bowl on track to being on President's Day weekend, and that would give fans an off day the following day, which I talked about that as well on a previous show. Now, for me, I probably don't have that off day. Now, if that was during the prime years of, elementary school, middle school, high school, that would be great. Even college, that'd be awesome. But that's not the case. So most likely, if we get that, and the Super Bowl is being played on President's Day weekend, I'm not going to have that off day, but that's okay. So, but I'm definitely on board with this idea. So Burrow proposed Week 13 as the Pro Bowl break, and he said, I guess with the 7-on-7 skills challenges, that he said that. This could increase ratings and provide all teams a break before the final stretch of the season, which I do agree with. And Burrow's proposal shows he considers both NFL and player interests, suggesting he could be, this is just an article that I was looking at. It said he could be a future NFL commissioner. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's at least what was in the article that I was looking at. But yeah, listen, if you have the interest of both, the NFL itself and the players, you want to try to compromise, and so both parties are satisfied. But it's something that I think will be a conversation because that's probably what we're going to end up going towards is an 18-game schedule. And, only time will tell how that all plays out. But like I said, I don't have a problem with it. I think that's a good thing that could be beneficial for both sides, mainly the players, because, again, if you're adding an extra game, you want to, give them extra rest. And I think this year, you're seeing some wacky schedules, especially late in the season when you have, 4 teams playing on a Saturday and then they're playing on the following Wednesday. That kind of that's a little wacky in my opinion. But, the NFL wants to have games on Christmas. You got games being played on Friday, you got games being played on Wednesday. The only day that doesn't have a game is a Tuesday. So we'll see if, they end up flexing a game on a Tuesday just to say, hey, we got games every day of the week. So, and now the NFL's kind of, conflicting with the college football schedule as well, late in the season. So, yeah, we got a lot of football. I haven't gone over it, but those final couple of weeks in December, it's going to be unbelievable, the schedule. When you got the college football playoffs starting, and then, you got the NFL season is about to end. Those last few weeks, it's a lot of football to be consumed, which is really exciting. But yeah, it's only a matter of time before they expand to an 18-game schedule. That's what they want to do. And there's maybe a possibility that they could even go more than that, maybe even the 20 games. Now, there's that's even further down the line once we get to an 18-game schedule. But it's just something to think about. So, but let me know what you guys think, though, about this proposal by Joe Burrow. He said week 13 would be around that time for that second bye week. But what's interesting is, would every team have a bye up to that point? Because with this season, there's teams that don't have bye weeks until, I think week 14. So, they'll figure it out. I guess maybe bye weeks will be a little bit earlier in the season. I don't know. I don't know what exactly it would be. Again, this is just an idea. This is not something that's getting put into motion just yet. But it is something to think about. Because, let's be honest, when you talk about the Pro Bowl, even with this new format, I'm not, I got to watch this. I got to pay attention to this. It's just, my favorite version of the Pro Bowl was the regular game, but it was when they did the fantasy drafts. You had, two Hall of Famers draft teams, and then they play against each other. It'd be a mix. It wouldn't just be the traditional NFC, AFC. They did that for, how long did they do that for? They did that for, 3 years? That was fun. But, then they kind of went back to the traditional NFC versus AFC, and it was, boring. Nobody's really trying. Because players actually did try in those games. But also the Pro Bowl actually meant something because you had home field advantage on the line. And it's kind of the same thing in baseball too. Because, me personally, I think the baseball All-Star Game is my personal favorite. But, those All-Star Games meant something when it came to home field advantage. Now it's just, they don't really have it. There's not really any stakes. So, but we'll see what ends up happening. I think, again, it's a good idea. If they expand to an 18-game schedule, you get that second bye week. I think you're going to have to do that. But only time will tell, right? It's not going to happen this year. Maybe it happens next year. Who knows? But I like Joe Burrow's idea. So let me know what you guys think about it. How do you feel about it? So we're going to take our first break now. And then when we come back, we'll continue our schedule breakdowns. Right now, we're in the last division, last few teams here. We did the Chiefs yesterday. Today, we will be doing the Chargers schedule. So I'll get into their schedule, give you my early thoughts on it, their early win-loss predictions for them. So that is what we will do when we come back from our first break of the show. So stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to go over the LA Chargers schedule. I'll give you my early win-loss predictions for them. So let's get into that. So the Chargers, they had a rough year last year. They went 5-12. Brandon Staley ended up losing his job, but they did replace him with Jim Harbaugh. So I think the Chargers, they're heading in the right direction. Now, it's going to be different this year because, they had a lot of changes particularly when it comes to their pass catchers. There's no more Keenan Allen. There's no more Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, or Gerald Everett as well. But you still got Justin Herbert, and they got a young receiving core, Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson, their second-year wide receiver. They're hoping for big things out of him. They drafted Lane McConkey. They also have DJ Chark as well, who I keep forgetting about, honestly. And then you have the Ravens backfield. And apparently J.K. Dobbins made a diss track for Gus Edwards because now they're both on the Chargers now. So they got the Ravens backfield. So that was something that one of my coworkers sent me, which I thought was I didn't listen to it or anything, but I just thought that was interesting. But they kept most of the guys on defense, or pretty much all the guys on defense. They kept Joey Bosa, they kept Khalil Mack. So and the defense was not very good last year. So I don't know. The Chargers are going to be an interesting team. So this is their schedule right here, and it's not very difficult. I mean, you play the AFC North, but you got the Panthers on the schedule. You got the Broncos twice, the Cardinals. So, I could see, the Chargers being a team that, could be sneaky good, but let's go through the schedule here. So you got the Raiders twice, and they split the season series last year. The Chargers won the first matchup early on in the season. The Raiders, they dropped, what was it, 62 points, 63 points. And that's what ended up getting Brandon Staley fired. Now, Justin Herbert did not play in that game. Easton Stick was playing in that game. So, but yeah, that was not a good game to watch. And especially if, in your spread pool, you pick the Chargers, which that was me. So, now, week 1, they take on the Raiders at home. And I'm going to say the Chargers do get off on the right foot, and they get a win here. So, I think it'll be a competitive game. I'm curious to see who ends up being, and we'll talk about this tomorrow when I do the Raiders schedule. Who is going to be the starting quarterback? Is it going to be Gardner Minshew? Is it going to be Aiden O'Connell? I'm curious to see how that plays out. I mean, I would lean towards Minshew, but who knows? Either way, I'm going to say the Chargers, they get off on the right foot. They get the win there, so I'll give them a win to start off 1-0. Then against the Panthers, I mean, are the Panthers going to be better this year? I mean, I think they'll be a little bit better, but I don't think they're going to be substantially better than they were last year. So I'm going to say the Chargers actually start off 2-0 on the year. Then they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that game could go either way. I think with the Steelers being at home, I'd lean towards the Steelers. But again, I could see the Chargers winning that game as well. Because, with the Steelers, they got some question marks too at quarterback. I mean, how is Russell Wilson going to be? So I would lean, right now I'm leaning towards Pittsburgh, but I could see that being a win for the Chargers as well. With the Chiefs, I mean, I could see them splitting with the Chiefs this year, even though, the Chiefs kind of, always beat the Chargers, even though there have been some epic matchups between these two teams, these two quarterbacks over the years, between Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. So maybe the Chargers get a split. But I'll say the Chiefs win the matchup early on in the season. And then at the Broncos, I mean, I don't think the Broncos are going to be very good, but it's a divisional game, so maybe the Broncos could get a split. But I'm going to lean towards the Chargers and take them here as well. Then against the Cardinals, I mean, I feel like that game could go either way as well. I feel like the Chargers could win that game. So I'm going to say they could win that. That's a winnable game for them. Then they're home against the Saints. Derek Carr facing a former divisional opponent in the Chargers here. I feel like the Chargers could also win that as well. And it's interesting because then after they play the Browns in Cleveland here, which I'll give the Chargers the loss there, then you got 3 straight home games. You got the Titans, the Bengals, and the Ravens. I think they could beat the Titans, but I'll say they lose back-to-back games to the Bengals and the Ravens. We're going to get the Harbaugh Bowl Week 12. I believe that's a Monday night game. But I'll say they lose those back-to-back games to those AFC opponents, AFC North opponents. Then they're at Kirk Cousins week 13. I feel like that's a winnable game for them. That could go either way. Because if I have them losing here, then they play the Chiefs in Arrowhead. But I did say they could split the season series. So I'm going to say they lose to Kirk Cousins, and then maybe they upset the Chiefs late in the season. Justin Herbert gets a good, finally gets another win against Patrick Mahomes. That would be nice. And then they take on the Buccaneers. I think they could win that game. That's could be a toss-up. I would lean Chargers. I lead Chargers again in Week 16 against the Broncos. Again, I just don't really think the Broncos are going to be very good. Again, that's another quarterback situation. I don't know what's going to happen. Who's going to be the starter? I mean, are we going to see all the quarterbacks play between Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, and Bo Nix? So, and then Week 17 they take on the Patriots. That was a very low-scoring game last year. What was it, 6-0? I mean, I don't think we're going to see that. I'd give the Chargers the edge in that game, and then I'd say they lose to the Raiders in Week 18. So, I had them losing to the Steelers and the Chiefs. Had them losing to the Bengals and the Ravens. Losing to the Raiders. The Browns. Yeah, I mean... And then I said Kirk Cousins as well. So yeah, I got them at around 9 wins. I don't want to give them too many wins because, again, this is, a new regime. Now, wherever Harbaugh goes, the team usually does well. And, there are some question marks. Who's going to step up and be that number one pass catcher in this offense? Because you got a lot of young guys. And, running the football is going to be something that they're going to emphasize here, with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. But you got Justin Herbert, and I think as long as you got him and he's healthy, he got hurt late in the season, the thumb injury, I think the Chargers are going to be a competitive team. I think for me, the defense has to be better. If the defense, could be a better unit in 2024, the Chargers are going to win going to win more games, and they're going to benefit from that. So, I think 9 wins is fair. I think they could get to around that. Maybe they sneak in, be one of the last wild card teams. This is a very competitive conference. I mean, I say this over and over again, but I know you guys probably get sick of me saying it, but it is a very competitive conference. I don't think there's a lot of bad teams in this conference. I think, you can make a case for pretty much every team in the AFC to make the playoffs. Pretty much every team. I'm not going to say every single team has a chance, but I think you can. The Broncos are one of those teams that I don't think really have a shot, but I think 3 of the 4 teams in the AFC West, I think they got a shot. The Raiders, they had, they finished 8-9 after getting off to a rough start, and now you bring in Gardner Minshew, who, the Colts came close to making the playoffs with him as the starting quarterback last year when Anthony Richardson went down. And I like the weapons they have on offense. The defense is playing better. So you got them, and then you got the Chargers. I mean, the Chiefs are going to be there, but yeah, the Chargers with Harbaugh and a healthy Justin Herbert, I feel like this team has a chance to make the playoffs year one with Harbaugh. Now, I think the following year, next year, you could look at them as being even better. This is kind of that year where, see how it goes and you go from there. I don't expect this team to be a 5-win team. I think a lot of that had to do with injuries last year. Again, Justin Herbert going down. If he was healthy, they probably win, a couple more games. But they also just, gave up on their head coach against the Raiders on that Thursday night. I mean, when you're giving up 60-plus points, to Aiden O'Connell as a starting quarterback, yeah, it looks bad. But that's what ended up happening. So, but that's what I think. I think 9 wins. I think that's fair. I'm not going to sit here and be like they're a 12-win team with Harbaugh right off the bat. I don't think so. I think that, 9 wins is fair. And like I said, maybe they get in as a wild card. I'm curious to see who kind of steps up and is that leading pass catcher in this offense. How are they going to be running the football with the Ravens backfield, basically? Is Quentin Johnston going to have a better sophomore season than he did his rookie season? Because drops were a problem for him last year. But like I said, I think as long as you got Justin Herbert, I think their offense is going to be, I'm not going to say it's going to be like a top 10 offense. I mean, maybe it could be, borderline. But I think this offense will be good. I think they'll be able to run the football. Like I said, Herbert's going to put up good numbers, and they're going to win some football games. So we'll see how it goes. But let me know what you guys think. How many games do you think the Chargers will win in 2024? Like I said, I think 9-8 is fair for them. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we get back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Tua Tagovailoa, more on the contract negotiations, him trying to get a new deal. We'll discuss that, where that currently stands when we return from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about Tua Tagovailoa more, where, the contract negotiations kind of stand. We'll actually talk about some comments made by ESPN's Jeff Darlington on where everything currently stands at the moment. So let's get into that. So he recently said that even though Miami and Tua have not yet come to terms on a new deal, the two sides have remained in consistent contact since talks from June. And this is a direct quote from him. He said, "While I can't say that there is anything imminent in terms of a deal as we inch closer to training camp, I can at least tell you that there have been active negotiations since then. They continue to try to get this done with a very amicable approach. It does not appear that this is going sideways by any means." So I guess that's encouraging. That it's not like the Brandon Ayuk negotiation. I know it's a different position, but it's not like the Brandon Ayuk negotiations where it just seems like things are going in the wrong direction. Even though the 49ers and Ayuk have recently met, but now there's something else going on with Ayuk posting footage of the Commanders. So I don't know what's going on there. I just can it just end already? But it seems like we're ways away from that getting to a conclusion as well. But at least here with Tua, it seems like things are heading in the right direction and that they're eventually going to get a deal done. Now, I know I talked about this as well on a previous show, that they're not going to give him, Trevor Lawrence or Jared Goff type money, but they're going to give him a good contract, it seems. And I know I was of the stance that maybe, you let him play out his current deal and then you see what happens, after that. And looking at Tua's numbers So he has a decent record, well, a good record overall with the Dolphins. 32-19 overall record with the Dolphins. He's got, a little over 12,639 passing yards and 81 touchdowns over 4 seasons. Last year, 4,600 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He had a good season. He was solid. I said maybe you want to see him, reach that 30 touchdown plateau, and you kind of see the interceptions go down, and maybe throw for a little bit more. Well, to a lesser extent, maybe throw for a little bit more yards, because throwing for 4,600 yards is really impressive. He led the entire league in passing yards, and it helps when you have guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I know they also did add Odell Beckham Jr. as well. If you were adding the Odell Beckham Jr. from 10 years ago, that would be amazing. What a receiving core. But, already it is a good receiving core. But, yeah, Odell is not the same player that he once was. But I think as a number 3 option, I don't think that's bad. And on top of that, you're going to be running the ball a bunch of times with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. So, Odell's kind of one of the, secondary options in this track star of an offense, really. But yeah, I'm curious to see how this plays out. Like I said, I was leaning towards maybe you let Tua play it out, and then you kind of reconvene at the end of the year. But if they give him a new deal that's less than Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff money, I'm fine with that. More so, I guess more so Jared Goff, because even when Trevor Lawrence, I said I think Trevor Lawrence deserved to get paid, but not $55 million a year, because Trevor Lawrence has something to prove too. Tua had a better season than him. The Dolphins made the playoffs. They went 11-6. The Jags, they collapsed. They finished 9-8. Now, I think part of that had to do with Trevor Lawrence getting hurt, but we got to see Trevor Lawrence look more so like he did in 2022, not like how he was last year, especially in the second half. Tua, I think, he deserves to get paid based off the season he had. But again, I just don't think he's a guy that should be making $50+ million a year. But if that's what he ends up getting, then so be it. That's, what the Dolphins decide to do. I don't know what the price range is, but at least it's not $55 million. Now, for me, I think Joe Burrow deserved the $55 million, because he's a guy that's made it to back-to-back AFC Championship games. He made it to a Super Bowl. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Tua's kind of in like that second tier. Trevor Lawrence is probably in that second tier. And you look at Jared Goff. Jared Goff's been to a Super Bowl now. It was with not the team that he's with now, but he also did take that team, the Lions, to the NFC Championship game last year, and he's coming off of a very good year. So, Tua and Trevor Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence at least has a playoff win, but last year was a disappointment. Tua, we got to see more. I want to see how he does in the postseason. The game against the Chiefs, I don't think many teams are going to beat the Chiefs in that environment. I don't even know if any team would beat them in that environment. So I'm not really going to hold that playoff loss against him. Again, you still lost the playoff game, but it just that was a tough challenge. But what I have held Tua to is the fact that last year they only beat one team with a winning record. That's where I have a problem. That was over the course of the whole season. That wasn't just, that one game against the Chiefs. You had the other game against the Chiefs in Germany, against the Ravens, the Bills, a couple times, the Eagles before they collapsed. You lost against every other team, besides the Cowboys. You've lost against every other team that had a winning record during the season. But against all these bad teams, like when the Broncos were really bad, you put up 70 points against them. You beat up on the Patriots. You beat up on the Jets. Yeah, seeing Tyreek Hill take it to the house constantly for 70 yards, also against the Giants and the Panthers. it's a lot of fun to watch, but can we see that against better teams? And when they had that collapse against the Titans, when they were up by a couple scores and they lost that lead late in the game, yeah, that wasn't good either. And Tyreek Hill got hurt in that game. And Tua just did not play well. That's where my criticisms of Tua come from. So I want to see what he can do against these better teams. You got those teams in your division. I think the Jets are going to be better. You still got to respect the Bills. I know they've gone through a lot of changes, but you still got to respect them. Show me that you could beat these better teams. And then, I will, those criticisms will go away. But, yeah, I mean, the late season collapse. The Dolphins had a chance to get the 2 seed in the AFC East, or the AFC, win the division, get the 2 seed, and they ended up choking that away. They lost to the Bills the final week of the regular season. They had a chance to win that game. And they had a date with the Chiefs in Arrowhead in those frigid conditions, and they were 1 and done. Other than that touchdown to Tyreek Hill, they really could not get anything going. Now, who knows what would have happened if they had that 2 seed and they, were playing at home. But that's just what ended up happening. So, for me, like I said, I think Tua had a solid year, but I want to see more. I want to see him put up good numbers against these better teams. And I know we had this conversation already today about the conference. It's a loaded conference. Show us that you belong in the conversation with some of these elite teams. Because those teams that you went up against, the 2 teams that you faced that faced off in the AFC Championship game, you went 0-3. And the Ravens dropped, 50 plus points on you? Show us that you belong with those teams. So it's a big year for Tua. Now, if he gets that new deal, like I said, so be it. For me, I mean, I think the Dolphins maybe should go in a different direction because I don't know if Tua is the long-term answer. But if that's just me saying that. If the Dolphins give him the contract, that they believe he's the long-term answer. And you know what? I don't want to be right. You know what? I want him to go out there and show that, yeah, he belongs with these top-tier quarterbacks. The Dolphins, with him as a starting quarterback, they belong as one of the elite teams in the NFL. But, for me, from what I saw last year, he put up a lot of good numbers against bad teams, and then against the good teams, he really didn't do that good. So we'll see what happens. Now, I expect the Dolphins to be a good team, finish with a decent record, get into the playoffs maybe, and then we'll go from there. Because there's too much talent on this team where I just don't think they're going to make it. Now, the way I talk, you would think I have like every team from the AFC making the playoffs. But like I said, you could make the case for a lot of these teams. There's maybe like 3 or 4 where you're like, they're probably not. Like the Broncos, I said, the Patriots, I'm trying to think of who else. Maybe a team or 2 in the AFC South. But other than that, you could make a case for a lot of these teams to make the playoffs. Now, there's only 3 wild card spots, and you got the 4 divisions. So not everybody's going to make it. Dolphins are one of those teams that you can make a strong case that this team should be in the playoffs. But we'll have to wait and see. So there isn't any major news when it comes to the Tua contract stuff, but it at least seems like it's moving in the right direction, and we should see a new deal agreed upon at some point. But who knows? Maybe they wait till the end of the year. That's also a possibility. So let me know what you guys think, though. Should the Dolphins wait till the end of the year to maybe give Tua a new deal? Should they go in a different direction? Or should Tua get his money right now? Do you think he's the long-term answer with the Dolphins? It's an interesting conversation to be had. Because, again, he did put up solid numbers. But it's just there's still some question marks there in some people's eyes, including mine. So when we come back from our next break, we'll talk about the Lions. I know I touched upon Jared Goff a little bit. We'll talk about the Lions, just some comments made by Aiden Hutchinson on the Lions' 2024 season. I'll give my thoughts on what he had to say when we come back from our next break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to talk about the Detroit Lions, a team that I'm very high on going into the 2024 season. Just some comments made by Lions defensive end Aiden Hutchinson. I wanted to go over what he had to say and give you my thoughts on it. So this is what he had to say recently. He said, "It's unreal. There's a lot of hype coming into this year, but I think it's well-deserved hype. I think a lot more guys on our team understand what this year is, and we understand what we got, and we're all ready." And he also said, "I think everybody has put everything into this upcoming year, and I feel like for the years to come as well, because it's not our last year we're all playing. There's a lot of great players on this team, and I think we could just have repeated success over the next few years." So, I mean, I think the Lions with this core could be good for a very long time. I think they're one of the best teams in the NFC. I think they're one of the teams that has the best chance to knock off, the defending NFC champs in the San Francisco 49ers. I think one of the weaknesses of the team last year was the defense. They did make some additions this offseason in the secondary. Through the draft, and I think because they also got, who'd they get? They got Carlton Davis, I think, from Tampa. So they tried to address the secondary. You got him up front, Aiden Hutchinson, of course, who's a stud. I mean, really, when you think of the Lions defense, he's the first name that pops up, and then of course on offense, I mean, they got stars all over the place, young stars. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who got paid. You got Sam Laporta going into his second year, the tight end. That combination of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery coming out of the backfield, a solid offensive line with Jared Goff. It's going to be a very good team for a long time. And then, of course, you got Kneecaps, who I love to call him, Dan Campbell, leading the charge as the head coach. I mean, I think this team is going to be really good once again. And yeah, can they get back to that point that they got to last year? And I think they definitely can. I think you got another team in their division that's going to have something to say about that, and that's the Green Bay Packers. And I also think the Eagles are going to be back to, being how they were before the collapse, with the firepower they added on offense, Saquon Barkley, as well as, trying to strengthen the defense. But right now, I mean, I'd probably, rank the Lions like 2 or 3. I'd probably lean towards saying 2, behind, the 49ers and maybe, ahead of the Eagles. I've kind of gone over my top teams in the NFC numerous times. But, that's kind of where I see them right now. And, yeah, they had a great chance to beat the 49ers. I mean, they were up by, 17 points, and they lost it. They lost the lead, and, there were a lot of things that didn't go right, or turnovers, and I think, Dan Campbell maybe, being his own worst enemy by going for it when maybe he should have just took the points. You had Josh Reynolds dropping passes in crucial moments. The Lions had an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl, and we would have had the matchup that we got in week 1, which I think would have been a nice way to end the season. We got, the matchup to start the year in the Super Bowl. And that's how the season would end. But that didn't happen. We still got a pretty good Super Bowl out of it. But, yeah. Now going into this year, it's, now the expectations are higher. I don't think many people had the Lions going to the NFC Championship game before the season started last year. Now, I think we all thought, or most people thought the Lions were going to be pretty good, but we didn't think they were going to be, NFC Championship game worthy. But as the season went on, you're like, maybe there's an opportunity, maybe there's a chance. And I think now you got the high expectations, and I'm hoping that Dan Campbell does learn from his mistakes last year, because again, I don't want him to suffer the same fate that Brandon Staley kind of suffered, because I know I've mentioned this too. I was a fan of Brandon Staley being overly aggressive when he first became the head coach of the Chargers, and he went for all on fourth down a bunch of times. They won that game in Arrowhead. I remember they converted on like a 4th and 7. It was great, but then it got to a point where you're like, all right, you got to take the points, and I feel like Dan Campbell, is kind of heading in that direction where maybe you should stop being overly aggressive. Now, Dan Campbell has brought his team to an NFC Championship game. Brandon Staley, they were up 27-0, whatever the score was against the Jags, and they lost that lead. So Dan Campbell still has a job. Brandon Staley is, he's not a head coach anymore. But that's what I worry about. You want to know when the right time is to go for the points and not to go for the points. And I think, the Lions were still, in a point where, you could have just went for the points, and that would have been the right decision. But they ended up not doing that. But, Josh Reynolds holds on to one of those passes. I mean, who knows? We'd be having a different conversation. But that was last year. This is now. And we'll see how it goes. But, you got the Packers, who are going to be a problem in the division. Like I said, I think the Bears could be a team that's good, with their rookie quarterback, especially with the weapons that they have on offense. The Vikings, I honestly, going through their schedule is tough. And I don't think the Vikings roster is bad. I think they have a good roster. It's just their schedule's tough, and, with Sam Darnold as your quarterback, or if you end up going to J.J. McCarthy at some point during the year, I don't think you're going to win a lot of games. So really, for me, it's going to come down to, in my opinion, it's the Packers and the Lions for the NFC North. Now, I have the Lions ranked slightly ahead over the Packers. I'm still going to give the Lions respect and say that they win the division, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers win it. The Packers went into Detroit on Thanksgiving last year, and they dominated. They were like 7.5-point underdogs. They went in there, and that was when they started to get on a hot streak. So, we'll see what happens. They split the season series. I mean, the Lions dominated in Lambeau, and the Packers dominated in Ford Field. So, that's those are going to be two really good matchups when these teams play against each other in 2024. So I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, the Lions, for me, the other thing too is on offense, is Jameson Williams going to step up and be that number 2 wide receiver? Because I feel like that's the one of the things that I think that we don't really know is, who's going to be that number 2 option that steps up. Now, Sam Laporta is kind of that number 2 option. But in terms of the receivers, who's going to be that guy that steps up opposite of Amon-Ra St. Brown? And many people look at Jameson Williams as being that guy. And we see the explosiveness. We saw how the NFC Championship game started off last year, that end-around play. And he took that to the house. He's got that breakaway speed. The talent is there. But is he going to be the guy that steps up and becomes that number 2 receiver? Because that's the one, I feel like that's the one thing that the Lions are missing, is that number 2 receiver opposite of Amon-Ra St. Brown. We know they run the football well, and they got a solid tight end, like I just said. But they're missing that. I feel like they're missing something on offense. That number 2 option. And if Jameson Williams could be that guy, then this conversation goes out the window. So, but I think despite that, this team is still going to be really good. And they start off the year, they take on the Rams. They take on the 2 teams that they faced off leading up to the 49ers. And they take on the Rams, start off the year. That's on Sunday night. Should be a lot of fun. Matthew Stafford coming back once again to Detroit. And then you got Tampa the following week. So, it's kind of like exactly how the playoffs started last year for them. So, they play the 49ers, I think, week 17? So, and that could very well decide who gets home field advantage. Is that game late in the season? So, but yeah, I'm excited to see what the Lions could do. I think they're going to be really good. I know another matchup I'm excited for is when they take on the Texans. I think that's also a Sunday night game as well. That should be a lot of fun. Those 2 offenses going at it. The Texans, they got very high expectations as well. So, but yeah, that's really my thoughts on the Lions. I'm curious to see how the defense is. There's some things to keep an eye on, but yeah, this is going to be a very good team once again, and we'll see what kind of repeat performance they have for 2024. So can they get past the NFC Championship game? Well, can they get back to the NFC Championship game, and then once they get there, can they get to the Super Bowl? I think this is a team that definitely is a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion. So we'll see how it goes, but let me know what you guys think. How do you see the Lions performing in 2024? What were your thoughts on what Aiden Hutchinson had to say? What kind of season do you think he's going to have in 2024? So we're going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we'll talk about another team in the NFC North. Actually, we just talked about them a little bit in this segment, and that's the Green Bay Packers, talking about their new free agent acquisition, Josh Jacobs, his comments on his upcoming season. So we'll get into that. How is he going to do, in my opinion? We'll get into all that when we come back from our final break of the show. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Josh Jacobs, some recent comments that he made on his upcoming season, his first season with the Green Bay Packers. But before that, we do have some breaking news. All right, so Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's changing his name to Joshua Hines Allen. So I just thought I would break that news. I saw that on Instagram as I was checking my phone during the break. Yeah, that was kind of just like a spoof there. But no, like this actually is a real thing. But I just thought, might as well break the news to the audience here in case you didn't see that. Also, it gave me a reason to use the breaking news graphic that we have. So, anyways, I just thought, I don't know, I just thought that'd be funny to do that. But if you didn't think that was funny, I'll try better next time. Anyways, so back to the original topic, Josh Jacobs. So the Packers, they signed him this offseason, and for the moment they had like the best 1-2 duo when it came to the running backs. Or one of the best. You had Josh Jacobs and you had Aaron Jones. But then they tried to get Aaron Jones to take a pay cut that he didn't agree to, and then they released him. And Aaron Jones was a fan favorite, and now he's playing for the Minnesota Vikings. So, yeah, that was tough for the Packers. They did bring back A.J. Dillon. It was like on the qualifying offer, which I didn't even know that was to be honest, I didn't know that was a thing in the NFL. When I think of the qualifying offer, I think of baseball. But yeah, they bring back A.J. Dillon. They also drafted a running back as well. But yeah, Josh Jacobs, they signed him to a 4-year, $48 million deal. And, coming off of a season that wasn't as good as the previous year. But yeah, he's still 25 years old, I believe. Still got some good years left. And I think with this Packers offense, I think he should do well. So this is what he said. I honestly think the sky is the limit in this offense. Obviously, with having a special guy in Jordan Love, and having a good offensive line and some good receivers out there makes it a lot easier for me. But just to be able to see the game plan and things that they want me to do this year, the things that they're allowing me to do, I just think it's going to be a special year. And he also said just to be able to come out and actually show that I can catch the ball more, not just that, but trusting me enough to be able to pick up protections. It's just so special when you got a guy like Jordan Love back there and you can't really just load the box every play and you make defenses decide what they want to stop. I think that's going to be the biggest help for me this year. And he also said to me, just from what I've seen, talking about Jordan Love, from what I've seen, he has all the traits and all the tools to be a superstar in this league. I think that as he keeps continuing to play and gets experience and becomes more confident in his abilities and what he can do, he's going to be the next superstar in this league for sure. And then he also said, I can honestly say that as I'm getting older and I'm playing longer, I have a real goal of legacy. I think that's a big thing, wanting to play in important games, play in the playoffs, make a deep run, and, play in that game if we get there. That's big for me. I think that's the most important thing. So, yeah, he's actually 26 years old now. He said, I'm one of the oldest guys on the team. And if you remember the Packers, they got a very young receiving core. A lot of guys are going into their second or third years. So Josh Jacobs said he's one of the oldest guys on the team. I don't take that really lightly coming in, and you're seeing these guys, especially these young receivers, on the cusp of being A players in this league, and being the face and being in a household staple, and being able to help guide them and teach them little things about what I do or what I see to help them elevate their game to the next level. I think that's a part of the reason why they brought me in here. And then he also joked about trying to recruit Devontae Adams and bring him back to Green Bay, but that obviously is not going to happen. But yeah, so he did have a lot to say, and I actually wanted to pull up Jacob's stats because he had a monster 2022 season. Last year, not as good. He got 805 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. He only played in 13 games last season, but the previous season, he had a breakout year. Played in all 17 games. Carried the ball 340 times. Had 1,653 rushing yards. Averaged 4.9 yards per carry. 12 rushing touchdowns. Had a monster year in 2022. And, talked about being a pass catcher, in the quotes that I read, which I think is very important. And also, being involved in pass protection, of course, giving Jordan Love extra time to, scan his progressions, find the open guy as well. But also, I guess a little bit from what I got from that is, kind of just being a mentor for these younger guys too, kind of being the older guy in the room, even though he's 26 years old, he's 2 years older than me, So, and I think that's important as well. And, this Packers offense, it's going to be really good. It's going to be really good. And I know I've done some segments on them. They're still working on getting a deal done with Jordan Love, trying to get him locked up long term. And I think that's a matter of when, not if. They are going to reach an agreement with him. And, if you remember late in the season, there was that stretch that, Brian Gutekunst talked about, and this was kind of like, what Jordan Love was going to be evaluated on, and he really stepped up to the challenge. He played really well down the stretch. The Packers got into the playoffs. They won a playoff game, and I also talked about how last year, they were trying to learn this new offense, and Jordan Love, this is his first full year as a starter. So there were there were some growing pains. There was that rough stretch in the middle of the year, losing to the Raiders, losing to the Broncos. But now they're kind of past that. They're past the learning stage. Now they're about enhancing this offense, and I think it's going to be really good. You got a lot of young receivers. You got a couple of decent tight ends. You got Josh Jacobs there now, who was their big acquisition. The other acquisition they made was on defense, was Xavier McKinney. But yeah, this offense is going to be really good in 2024. If Jordan Love plays like how he did, at the beginning of the year and especially at the end of the year, this team is going to be really good. And I'm really looking forward to what they can accomplish in 2024. And, you're going to see them take on the Eagles right off the bat. And I think that should be a very good game. That should be very entertaining. Two high-powered offenses going at it. You got Josh Jacobs on one side, who went to a new team, as well as Saquon Barkley on the other side. So I'm looking forward to that. And, let's see what the Packers can do. And let's see what Josh Jacobs can do. I think if he's healthy, I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't get to 1,000 yards once again. I'm willing to say he can get to that. But the Packers, I think, are going to be a very balanced offense. I don't think they're going to be leaning strongly to one way or the other. I think they're going to try to balance it out. And, if they're going to be one of those teams that has a balanced offense, and that's what's going to make them really dangerous, because they could beat you so many different ways. Now, when you look at the receivers, yeah, you wouldn't rank these guys in the top 15 or even in the top 20, but I think they all have, unique qualities to them. I think they're all decent receivers, but I don't look at any of them as like being an elite receiver. You got Jaden Reed, you got Dontavian Wicks. They're going into their second years. You got Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. I believe they're going into their third year. Well, yeah, they're going into their third years. But I don't look at any of them as being like top tier wide receivers. I think they're all solid receivers, but I don't think that they're elite wide receivers just yet. Christian Watson, his rookie season, he looked like he was going to be the guy, and he still very well can be the guy. It's just what happened. He kept dealing with injuries, So I'm curious to see how they all are now. Another year in the system, another year with Jordan Love as a starting quarterback. But yeah, they're going to be a balanced offense, and they are really going to be a problem for a lot of teams. So I'm looking forward to see what they could do. Josh Jacobs, like I said, 805 yards last year. I think he could get more than that. And then what did he have with rushing touchdowns? What was it, 6? Yeah, he had 6 rushing touchdowns. I'm going to say he goes over that. We're gonna bet the overs. Well, I'm not saying I'm actually going to bet him, but I'll say Josh Jacobs gets over 6 touchdowns and over his rushing yard total from last year. I think he's going to have a better year, but only time will tell. And yeah, we're going to put a bow on the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in to the show. Actually, before we wrap up here, just again, let me know any your guys' thoughts on the Packers, on Josh Jacobs. How do you see him performing in 2024? I think he'll have a very good season if he's healthy. But yeah, we're going to end off the show right here. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to give them some love. I know we kind of hit a little bit. I'm not gonna say a rough patch. We're kind of in that period where right now it's just baseball, and we still got some time before college football starts, before the NFL season starts. I know the NBA Summer League, that has started. Actually, the MLB draft is coming up, but yeah, we've kind of hit a little bit of a lull period. But don't worry, at some point, it's not going to just be me talking about players making comments on things and contract rumors and things like that. We are going to get to actual games at some point. Because, yeah, I mean, it's been hard at times to try to think of things to talk about. That's why we started doing the schedule breakdowns. And I might be doing some sort of rankings once we finish off the schedule breakdowns. So stay tuned for that. But, yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today again. Thank you guys for tuning in. Check out all the other shows. And, so that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. I don't know how many times I'm going to keep saying that, but yeah. Make sure to check out the show tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.